everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're walking through 10 absolutely critical mental health signs that, they're honestly just way too easy to brush aside. Mental health isn't always black and white, right? And understanding these little nuances, it can genuinely change or literally even save lives. So let's just get right into it.
Let me ask you directly. Do you remember the last time you felt sad or anxious or just plain scared that you are somehow off? Maybe it felt like this heavy shadow you just couldn't shake. Well, if you're kind of nodding your head right now, I want you to know something right out of the gate. You are absolutely not alone, even if the world sometimes makes it feel like you are.
Just a quick heads up before we really get going. This explainer covers some pretty heavy stuff, including mental illness, self-harm, and suicide. So please prioritize your own well-being. If you need to click away at any point, feel totally empowered to do so. Your health always, always comes first. Okay, let's dive into section 1, More Than a Funk, where normal feelings become deeper warnings. We're going to look at how the National Alliance on Mental Illness separates a simple, everyday rough patch from a much deeper issue. Because, we've all been in a funk, right? But what actually happens when that funk just flat out refuses to leave? So, what's our very first warning sign? It's abnormally intense sadness. Look, everyone experiences sadness. It's just a fundamental part of being human, and normal sadness generally gets better as time goes on. But the American Psychiatric Association points out that intense sadness lasting for 2 straight weeks or more, that's a clinical warning sign. That's the threshold where it transforms from just a crummy week into potential depression. The National Institute of Mental Health really validates this perfectly. They state that not being able to snap out of it or sadness being heavier than normal should be taken seriously. If people are telling you to, just smile and you physically and emotionally just can't, that is not a personal failure on your part. It is a medical reality, and it deserves to be taken seriously.
Moving right along to section 2, internal emotional shifts, changes happening beneath the surface. We're shifting now from that baseline of deep sadness into more complex and honestly sometimes really confusing internal emotional struggles, where no one else can immediately see them.
And this brings us to signs 2, 3, and 4. Sign number 2, extreme mood swings that basically leave you feeling like you have emotional whiplash. Sign number 3, out of control worry and anxiety that bring along those awful racing thoughts or an inability to just relax. And sign number 4, having an increasingly difficult time dealing with normal everyday life situations. Let's kind of unpack how these internal signs escalate. Let's focus on those mood swings for a second. A study by Clem and others showed that, sure, an average person's emotions naturally fluctuate every day, and we actually tend to experience positive emotions like joy more often than negative ones. That's your normal baseline. But NAMI and the American Academy of Pediatrics outline some really clear red flags for bipolar disorder. Things like experiencing excessive euphoria, deep sadness, or anger for most of the day. We're talking dramatic swings that cause massive changes in your energy and behavior that have literally nothing to do with what's actually happening in your life. To put that into perspective, here's how we track these internal symptoms over time. If a rough patch hurts your ability to function for 2 weeks to 2 months, the Australian Department of Health says that might be a sign of depression or anxiety. Now, if your worry gets so out of control that you feel anxious on most days for at least 6 months, the Anxiety and Depression Association of America suggests that is a very clear signal to seek professional help. Basically, the longer it goes on, the more urgent the warming. Let's move to section 3, behavioral and coping changes, where internal struggles become visible actions. Because eventually, that invisible internal pain just becomes way too heavy to hide, and it starts to visibly alter a person's physical actions and how they cope.
These shifts manifest as signs 5 through 8. Sign 5 is withdrawing and isolating. Mental health pros like Raymond Starr Jr. and Howard Dubowitz link avoiding people or events you used to love directly to depression, anxiety, or psychotic disorders. Sign 6 is drastically sleeping too much or too little. Sign 7, abusing drugs or alcohol to cope. And sign 8, extreme, uncontrollable anger outbursts. Actually, Healthline reports that explosive anger that totally doesn't fit the situation could be warning you about unresolved trauma, OCD, bipolar disorder, or intermittent explosive disorder.
Let's talk about sleep for a moment. While about 10 to 18% of the general population deals with sleeping problems, Harvard Medical School states it's 2 or 3 times more common in people suffering from a mental illness. In fact, roughly half, yes, 50% of people living with ADHD, depression, anxiety, or bipolar disorder suffer from either insomnia, which is not sleeping enough, or hypersomnia, sleeping way too much. Sleep is just a massive indicator of our mental health. So, the crucial point here is this staggering statistic. A full 25%, that's 1 in 4 people who live with the symptoms of a mental illness, use alcohol or drugs to self-medicate things like anger, anxiety, or mania. It's a coping mechanism, and it's especially prominent in individuals dealing with depression, anxiety disorders, personality disorders, or schizophrenia. It's not just some bad habit, it is a desperate attempt to numb an overwhelming internal reality. Now we are entering Section 4, Critical Red Flags, Severe Symptoms Requiring Immediate Attention. We're getting into an area that requires our absolute utmost attention and our deepest compassion. Because when these signs show up, it means the situation has escalated significantly and requires immediate medical support.
Our 9th warning sign is psychosis. Now, what's really interesting about this is how Kamari describes it through 2 aspects, hallucinations and delusions. It's this sense of perception or belief that creates a massive, overwhelming urgency in the person experiencing it, despite hard evidence that it isn't real. And it's actually not as rare as you might think. NAMI reports that up to 100,000 people in the U.S. will experience psychosis every single year, and 3 out of every 100 people will have a psychotic episode in their lifetimes. This brings us to our 10th and honestly most critical sign, thoughts of suicide and self-harm. Research by Brad Burdovic back in 2018 reported that approximately 90% of people who completed suicide also suffered from a severe mental illness, like bipolar disorder or depression. This data fundamentally proves that mental illness is a life or death health issue. It demands exactly the same urgency and medical care as any physical illness.
Expanding on this critical 10th sign, the Mental Health Foundation found that up to 10% of people under the age of 30 have thought about self-harm or suicide. And why? Usually because of overwhelming weights that people just feel they cannot carry alone. Severe, uncontrollable life events like abuse or neglect at home, a major loss, deep trauma, or some sudden uncontrollable catastrophe are primary causes. If you or someone you love is having these thoughts, it is a glaring, critical warning sign that your brain and body are just completely overloaded by these traumas.
All right, let's bring it to Section 5, the power of reaching out. You are not alone and help is available. Understanding and recognizing these 10 signs, that's really just the very first step. The next step is the one that actually leads to healing, resilience, and reclaiming your life.
If you can relate to literally any of the symptoms we've walked through in this explainer today, please let this truth sink in. You're definitely not alone, nor are you bad for feeling this way. There is absolutely zero moral failing in having a mental illness. Your struggle doesn't define your worth, but you absolutely deserve to feel better, and we deeply want you to take care of yourself.
Taking care of yourself means taking action, and the absolute best way to do that is to reach out to a mental health professional to get the exact help you need and deserve. Here is a clear game plan you can follow right now. Step 1, contact your insurance company to find covered therapists in your area. Step 2, if you're a student, go walk into your local college's student counseling clinic today. Or Step 3, call your county crisis line. The resources are out there and they are waiting to catch you.
And that brings us to the end of our explainer. I want to leave you with one final vital question to really ponder. Will you take the vital step to prioritize your mental health journey today? Whether it's making a phone call for yourself or just checking in on a friend whose behavior has totally changed.